I do believe we are you, beloved and holy friend. Thank you for joining me again on another conscious evolution. Another opportunity for us to consider how the stronger we become, the easier everything else gets. Right? And this was in part inspired by some anime logic. The anime we've been watching the second season of One Punch Man. I never got around to it until now, and it's an anime with strong dudes, right? Heroes, people that want to protect others, kind of vibe. So I get super hyped watching something like that, and I start to exercise. And the conversation between me, Max, and John arises about becoming strong and about what it means to become strong. And then from that conversation, the line arose that the stronger you become, the easier everything else gets. And this was very much related, at least in that moment, to this understanding that this physical body of yours has like a capacity for strength, right? Has a capacity for lifting with your legs, has a capacity for lifting something above your head. And by testing those capacities and by showing your muscles in your body that those capacities are necessary, you grow stronger, right? Those capacities can increase. And at least from my personal experience, I have found that one of my favorite things about being strong isn't so much the actual display of strength, right? I don't necessarily enjoy the idea of moving very heavy weight as a sign of strength. More, I like the idea of not feeling my weight as a person, as a body, right? Like that in my mind is the ideal for me. Feeling weightless. Getting so strong that being a person is easy. And that is what we're talking about today, right? And there is obviously platitudes. I don't know if that's the right word, but depth, levels to this concept. We can definitely talk about the. Hmm, how nice that smells. Gets distracted instantly. We can definitely talk about the depth of emotional kind of, you know, like posturing, if you will, getting stronger in that way, and how the things we end up facing. Like we, let me reverse a few days. On Friday night, we watched a movie called Ultraman Rising, I think, and it was basically a movie about family. And there was a few moments where they were talking about his mom, who is who is gone, right? She passed or disappeared, or they they were very vague about a great many deal of things, but they had this AI, and when this AI would create environments, there would be these moments where the AI would place his mom's place his mom in the stand, right? Like in the stands of the actual baseball game, kind of cheering him on, right? And the emotionality and the depth of missing and appreciation you feel when you're in that open state of mind definitely takes you places, right? And it makes you think about both how much you love your parents, and it makes you think about how devastating it will be to lose them, right? And it's a weird state of being to come from, right? Like it's not exactly a good feeling. I think it's very oh goodness kind of feeling, right? And to think of it again from this perspective of becoming stronger, the way that I have taught myself how to deal. I like the banner. I just noticed it's different. I was hoping for you to notice. I did a graphic design there. I'm happy that you like it, Jovan. Good. Good. Yeah, I'm proud of how it turned out as well. I had to like go in and out multiple times to make sure it's like sized right for all of the different websites, cell phone, TV interfaces. So thank you, Joe. And in this growing of emotional maturity, emotional strength, for me, instead of getting sad, and this is not me trying to be negative or like a bummer or insensitive, even I think the best word. But death in that way that we can feel towards, and a potential fear have associated, connected, of grown muscle fibers in between the tendons and bones. That is my emotional way of seeing the world as well. Specifically, the way I see masculine and feminine energy, right? Where the masculine is the unchanged in me and the feminine is the change, right? And that feminine is Mama Gaia, if we want to attach to that. And Mama Gaia is what gave her body for my mom to have a body. And then my mom gave her body for me to have a body, right? Like kind of this intricate attachment system that I cannot get away from, right? And in that way, uh, I have emotionally strung myself to the point where I don't allow myself to try not to get emotional about loss, right? And that's loss in all of its terms: financial loss, loss of opportunity, loss in death, right? And I'm not saying that I'm like so strong or whatever. I'm just noticing how that strength has grown in me alongside all of the other ways we've become stronger as well. And I think it's interesting. What do you friends think? Hmm? Have you grown more emotionally strong? Just noticed the banner again. Yeah. Let me see it as well. I haven't seen it in a while too, actually. Yeah. That does look cool. The new Meltmore banner. I use some flowery flower, so it's my art. Maybe the Meltmore isn't that legible. It's kind of melty, right? I added so many layers. There's like 3 different text layers on that Meltmore, Chopin. I had to get it popped properly. When you feel like melting, melt more. Melt more. That's what you do. You feel like melting. Feel like you're melting. Easy solution. You yoga just in time to hear the final thought. I was awake and ready, but I had to get my caveman brain to figure out how to install and register with Zoom. That's the first step, bro. Now next time you don't have to do any of that at least. Look forward to seeing you in class, bro. I'll make it a part of my mornings from now on. It has helped me greatly, right? I had this conversation with Ryan, the owner of the studio I teach for, right? Where we have phone calls now and then. And in our last phone call, he asks me, do I still want to continue doing the yoga, right, as a teacher? Because I have been doing it for close to 2 years, and it hasn't been extremely financially successful, which is not my goal, right? Fortunately, if it was, then I would have a problem with it. But in that, I mentioned to him, and he mentions to me that since it hasn't been that successful, I don't really have to continue. And I go, no, I do want to continue, but for selfish reasons. And I say so. I say selfish reasons because the fact that I'm a yoga teacher means that I do have the opportunity to teach yoga every day. And in teaching yoga, I actually get to practice, which is very nice. I probably wouldn't be as fit as I am right now if it wasn't for me teaching yoga. Right? I wouldn't be as strong as I am right now if I wasn't a teacher. So even though I might not get compensated particularly, abundantly for it, it is still something that's abundantly good for my body. And for that reason, I'm encouraging you to do it with me. It's 15 minutes, right? 15, 20 minutes, right? At most, it's 30 minutes of your whole day. And then you get to feel better having made yourself strong. Jovan kept tagging me, and her persistence finally pushed me over the edge of indifference. Thank you for the nudge, Jovan. Isn't she great? Love you, Jo. The font is legible enough. That banner looks pretty good. I promise to love persistently, consistently, and insistently. I love that. Yeah. I'll take that promise. Love is true. Hi, Melvin, everyone. Hi, Nancy. How are you today, friend? A little bit less busy? I hope so. I have some aliens. Aliens with a Z in here. And I have my lighter on my lap. That's why you are you. And that's why you are persistent, consistently, and insistently loved so much. Good morning, Nancy. Isn't this true? Yeah. Today was a good day. I got more quotes. I now have independent quotes for two different relatively equivalent sound systems. Relatively. Emphasis on the relatively. They will be comparable. At the volumes we'll play them at, I don't think people would be able to notice a difference. And they cost around the same amount of money. And then in this exchange of getting second quotes, right? Because there's this sound system. Their EAW is the brand's name, and then they have this line, right? Like a range called Anyas, Anas, and Autos. And those things are insane. One line array, right? So to give you an idea, the line arrays that I got quoted for with the previous price, right? And that's like $60,000, give or take. Let's work on $60,000. Both of my other quotes are about $60,000, and both of those $60,000 quotes has 8 line arrays, right? So those speaker boxes. Each of those one line arrays weigh about between 19, and I think the heavier one, I think the JBLs are a little bit heavier, weigh I think 29 kilograms, right? So 40 to 60 pounds, right? For a line array. That's one of those little boxes. And then I did connect with the people that sell the EAWs in South Africa. And I tell him what we want, and I tell him that we got a quote from JBL, and I tell him what our quote range is, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna have to probably quote you on this SRX system, you know. And I'm like, okay, that's fine, you know, let's see what it is. And it basically comes out about the same number. And I ask him, please, just anyway, quote me on those Anyas and Autos as well. And one line array, one of those boxes is $30,000. One of them. One box. One box is $30,000, and it weighs 270 kilograms. No, pounds. Sorry. It weighs 120 kilograms or 129 kilograms. For a that's like a big guy, like a big person, right? As a box, as one of them, as one line array box. So I kind of lost my mind for a second. I was in disbelief that they would be both that heavy and that expensive. But it checks out. There's none of them in South Africa. Not a single one of them. And now I want one. Well, I want two. I want two of those $30,000 line arrays. Is two enough? Yeah, fine. Two of those, and then the auto subs. I don't think we need the auto subs necessarily. They are pretty cool. They're directional. They have ports inside of them that can literally move their drivers. It's very cool. So cool. And they had like demo units in South Africa that they were testing, and then they had them for like a year and a half, this company that I was talking to, and nobody bought any. So they had to send their demo units back, which is kind of sad. But in this conversation, in this talks, I got the EAW guy relatively excited to do a demo for us, and then maybe the way that I am trying to kind of like get this thing churning, we'll get that demo to be set up at the joint, and then I'll get like a bunch of clients in the area to kind of show up for that sound demonstration as well. And then maybe I can get investors to buy the sound. And then again, if I can get it working like that, I can get the JBL people to come out and do a sound demo too. And then we're gonna go and check out the FBT Myra launch, a new speaker system that is now having its debut launch here in South Africa in the Vodacom Dome. And as I'm having a conversation with the EAW guy, I'm like, oh wait, thank you for the quote. We're still gonna go and check out these FBT Myras, which is another competing brand. And they're like, oh wait, we're gonna be there too, because we wanna see what's happening in the industry. So when we go and see those speakers, I'm gonna have a meeting with these EAW guys as well. Tinas will be there as well, the owner of the joint, so we'll be able to talk to them directly. I'm feeling excited about that too. I have been. Like, weirdly enough, this whole speaker thing sounds like it's like a thing that's now only bubbling up in my consciousness. But when I was still earning money in China, and people asked me what do I want to do with the money I save when I come back, one of my first answers is I want to buy speakers and then do work with them. But unfortunately, I didn't save enough money. Right? I thought I would save more money, and the price of good speakers is a little bit out of my range still, at least at that point. So I bought a PC instead, and that PC is the thing that's now technically doing our mapping for us. So tools, buy tools, Melt. I say to myself, don't buy cars, don't buy houses, don't buy expensive liquor. Fortunately I have no problem with that. Don't buy cigars. Buy more tools. The autism says, my morning routine is early morning walk with my doggo before stream. It's so beautiful with the early morning quiet, which is relative. Not on my side. Your streams keeps cutting out. I think I saw some glitchiness. Let me try and exit out and come back. There we go. I don't know if that's gonna help, but I sure do hope so. Connectivity issues. Oh geez, blessings all around, and my heart is so full, and love is true. Love is indeed true. Oops, press send too fast, but sure. Have the run on the sentence, Nancy. Love you, friends. Much work lurk now. Love you. You got this. Melty, that sounds like a rot of Dara's. Mucho monies. Yeah, for the Anyas and Ottos that I actually want, that's a lot of money. $30,000. 30,000. Let me show you what they look like. They're pretty sexy. They're super hot. Melt proceeds to show you inanimate objects. EAW. Anya. Anya V2. Maybe you won't find this attractive. But that's what they look like opened up. Right, so they have like these channels, and then they have channels, and then they have these 10-inch woofers on the sides as well. That's the Otto. This thing has two 18-inch subs in it, and then it has a port. This port points forward, and you can literally steer the bass out of that port. Yeah, so these are the ones. Those like look at that. That stack is 30, 60. Let me count so I can properly see. And that's four of them. So that's $120,000 standing there. Isn't that wild? You will have your face melted. These things, as SPL is 152 decibels. Right? You would literally stand next to a jet engine, blasting fire and explosions straight at your face, and it will be about as loud as those things can get. You wouldn't play them that loud unless you want your audience faces melted. But that's what they look like if there's a big array of them hanging. It would be redonkulously expensive. Let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16. 16 of those bad boy keys. So it would be 1.8 million US dollars. That's 1.8 million US dollars hanging there. And again, one of these boxes weighed 275 pounds. It breaks my brain. I want to hear what they sound like so bad. But these are the ones that we're now actually, like these are still kind of in the price range we can consider. The SRX, I think 212s. Yeah. 2.8s. 208s. This is the one we were looking at. Yeah, these are the ones. They look more like the traditional line arrays that you've probably seen at festivals and shows. Yo, dynamic audio, yeah, and these are the subs we're looking at as well. That's one of the smaller ones. Those subs. Two 18-inch guns. And they're relatively inexpensive. They cost the freaking math conversion over and over again. 95,000 rand, which is like $4,000. $4,000 for that, which is a little bit better than for just one line array box. But I have the sound that we have worked at, like the White Rabbit Festival, for example. That festival had the EAWs. The Bumblebee Festival as well. That festival also had the EAWs. So we've heard what they sound like at the very least. Have you talked about Dark Oxygen? No, but only because I am not necessarily a scientist. I am very interested. I am a scientist when it comes to myself, but not so much when it comes to dark oxygen. Dark oxygen is essentially oxygen being produced in darkness without the aid of photosynthesis. We have known for a while that there are these nodules made of metals, down there underneath the ocean bed, basically, over millions of years compacting into these little nodules. And those little nodules have voltage differences, like enough voltage difference as like a battery, like an average kind of like, 1.5 volt battery. They can go up to 0.98 volts. And that voltage differential literally splits water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen very, very deep down there in the ocean. And it is potentially adding to our whole ecosystem, to the oxygen we're breathing, to the oxygen that is under there, underneath the water, for the little critters to breathe as well. So more cool stuff. But again, that's how much I know. Like I'm interested in this stuff and I'm up to date about the science, but I can't tell you more than that. It is very cool though. It is very, very cool. Leave the freaking nodules alone, is what I'm thinking. Please leave them alone, mining companies. Melty, that sounds like an awesome plan. Remember to have a safe space to store that stuff. Those are plenty. Oh yeah, no, like that would be pretty much a prerequisite. I don't even think they would like let us get them if we don't have a proper place to keep them. That will make the hair bounce. Oh yeah. Like you can feel that bass. Like it literally lifts you off the ground. I don't know if it literally lifts you. It feels like it lifts you off the ground. And those EAW subs, you feel the same amount of driving baseline at front of house that you maybe a little bit less, but that you do at the literal front of the stage, right? I've never been able to articulate that. The place we were having that experience at was at the White Rabbit venue, and there was these two like earth walls kind of like pushed up where the little stage was happening in. So that might have like added like a kind of like compression effect as well. But everything was still very much bass, even right at the back, as far away from the speakers as you would want to be on the stage kind of vibes. And that after I felt that kind of clarity, like it's a drive kind of thing. You know exactly where your drives are. And then hearing other speakers since, where they have more. They have literally double the amount of bass bins with double the amount of 18-inch drivers. And it doesn't sound as good. Like not even a little bit. And that kind of messes with my brain as well, how that's even possible. I think it could also be a sound engineering thing. And Martin is really good, that friend of mine, when it comes to that stuff as well. No. Good old dark oxygen. I thought you were talking about rand, not US dollars. Yeah. Yeah, I was talking about US dollars. 30,000 US dollars for one of those line arrays. Yeah, I know. It's wild. It's like a car. It's like a nice car for one. of those line arrays. One box that weighs 130 kilograms. Right? And for me, the reason why the price and the weight is so important is because it kind of baffles my brain, right? Yes, it's very heavy. It's absurdly heavy for what it is, a single line array, for it to weigh 270 pounds. But at the same time, that you're paying a car's amount of money for 270 pounds worth of materials, right? Metals, wood enclosure, electronics. Technically, there's a lot of stuff happening in between whatever happens between the price and the weight of all of that gear. But they are probably worth that much. They're the future. I want future. Give me futures. Oh, that is way more money. Oh yeah, dude, tell me about it. Like I literally like swallowed my spit after seeing those prices. What are we doing today? Meat wads. We're talking. We're doing the talks. Today's stream topic is technically about becoming stronger, and I think I have to become stronger in my will and my resolve to not want things. I think that's where I have to get stronger. I went through a speaker obsession phase. I realized I'm currently have 13 speakers and 5 subwoofers hooked up across multiple rooms in my house. I get it, Mojo. Ironically, my hearing sucks from too many live shows without ear protection. That is unfortunate. That is one of the things that I am considering as well. There is a pair of ear protections. Yes, there is a pair of ear protections I can get. There's a place called Hartbeespoort Ear Institution or something like that. You sit in the chair, they force some putty into your ear as deep as it can go. They take that putty out, they do something to the putty, and then they literally carve channels throughout that thing and they put different filters and stuff in those channels for exactly the type of use case you're going to be using it for. And it's ear protection without losing sound quality. But they're also like $250. Like 5,600 and something rand, so closer to $300. And I do want them, but that's also a lot of monies. But it's, as you said, Mojo, like it's an ear protection thing. I will get cyber ears when they become available, but they're not available yet, so I might as well get ear protection in the meanwhile. Melt is dreaming about being rich AF. Yeah. I've been dreaming about this the whole time, Mojo. Surely that's the only way it can happen. I can't become wealthy by dreaming about being poor. Alright. I have to become strong. I don't have to be rich. Love is true. I'm surprised my hearing isn't worse than it is. May it get better. Love you. I bet your neighbors just love you. That's kind of rough. Maybe far away or maybe really nearby vibes. Drive-by lovin's to each and every one of you. Love you, Kristen. I'm surprised that my hearing is still good. So many concerts and festivals where my head was against the speakers. I read about this yesterday. A solar panel small enough to be installed on the side of a balcony and then plugged into a wall socket to feed energy produced by the sun directly into the home. It's a thing in Germany, and when I tried to find a panel here so I could use it the same, it's like 10 times more expensive. But maybe I wasn't looking in the right place. No, you are American, right, Nancy? Unfortunately, your country has very interesting tariffs, sanctions, taxes on like any imported solar panels. That's one. Two, I don't know if your energy grid allows you to feed energy directly into it just yet. I don't know if there has to be some sort of specialized meter installed, but I know what you're talking about. It is really cool, right? Those like balcony, because you literally hang them over your balcony and then you're producing some of your energy yourself. Having a little energy system plugged into that wall as well that charges and then adds into the grid as well and then can basically take over your home's energy use if there's a power failure. It is very cool. Maybe you should come to South Africa. Mel already did the off on thing. Did the stream drop? Is it still bad? I am so sorry. Like our internet has been a little bit spotty. Yeah, it's been glitchy. It's unfortunate, but I'm not gonna get myself angry about it right now. I think it's unfortunate because I know literally in 2 days, tomorrow, 1st of August, our price for the Starlink is literally going up double. It's going from I think $80 a month to $160 a month or something like that. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So the service is getting markedly worse, and our it's not terrible, and now we're gonna have to pay double the price for it as well. So that's where my brain is a little bit. Nancy, I just saw something this week too. The solar generator tech is getting pretty impressive. Yeah, every single person can become an energy producer. That is what solar and batteries is going to do for our species. Not just, take us away from non-renewables. It's the fact that you become an energy producer. You produce energy, Slovans. It's nice having you here, Slovana. Sending you a blessing. Then Intergalactic Lovins. Today's stream topic, Bojana, is about how when we become strong, everything else becomes easy. And I think if anyone is, you are a strong person. Has it made the rest of life easier? Do let us know, Slav. I don't know. I don't know if it's true what I'm saying. I'm just saying it as a perspective. Does it get easier? It's a pretty loaded question. Maybe it's not supposed to get easier. Maybe we're just supposed to get better at handling the pain of doing hard things. Like thinking about a marathon runner, right? I don't think it's any less painful for a marathon runner to run a marathon. Maybe eventually it is technically less painful for them. But I think if you had to give two people, one with the mentality of wanting to run a marathon and one with the mentality of not wanting to run a marathon, and you give both of them the time and the space to prepare, the person that wants to run a marathon will be better at it because of that sheer, almost yesterday's stream topic, hubris, right? That willingness to push themselves past the pain, right? To experience the pain and to continue forward anyway, right? And that, again, can be seen as a type of strength. Maybe, again, a type of emotional or psychological strength, but strength nonetheless. I love this perspective. This is true. You are loved, dear friend. We just get more familiar in how to use the newfound tools. Of course, that's the word you use. Today has been, at least for me, a conversation stuck in talking about tools again. I'm still waiting for that friend of yours to let me know that I can do visuals for him. I know it's probably gonna be next year, but I'm ready. I'm ready, Brianna. I'm super ready. With these fractals starting slowly but surely, I want to do sound for these festivals as well. Hell yeah. Oh, Piles, love appears. There we go. Love is true. I feel myself reaching for my cards. Okay. There's not enough clarity. I am seeing that I am not seeing. The strength in me is showing me that I can grow stronger. Dreams of abundance and ease. I use that word today again, bro. This has been the year of abundance. An abundance of change, an abundance of challenge, an abundance of opportunity, an abundance of love, an abundance of support. What a beautiful year this has been. Thank you for the abundance that you're adding in this moment. Hands around an egg. Hands around an egg. I don't know if you were trying to see what I was seeing, but upon trying to see what you were seeing, I saw hands around an egg. And then I got closer to the egg. And the egg had inside of it a universe. And inside of that universe were hands holding an egg. And then I would get close and see that inside that egg was a universe. And then inside that universe there was hands holding an egg. Much love to you all, legends. I'm off to sleep. To sleep lands, and I hope your day is glorious. Sending you love-ins. Thank you. It's love. Sleep well, dear friend. We'll see you tomorrow again. We'll see you in tomorrow. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. That one is giving me goosebumps. You see that? Yeah. Yeah. I can feel it. This one. This one wanted to be seen too. Seen by me alone. Yeah. I'll tell you this one though, because again, I know what these cards mean, and I feel like that card was just for me. It had nothing to do with the stream. This one, however, I feel does. We were talking about strength, and this could be seen as the strength of your ethereal body. Red as your root, orange as your sacral, yellow as your solar plexus, green as your heart chakra, your throat chakra and your third eye, and eventually your crown. Pure light. Wheels of light. We haven't pulled this card in a while. Chakras and energy centers. It takes strength to activate our energy centers. Chakras are the human body's subtle rainbow energy centers. The primary chakras are 7 spinning vortexes of energy and light. Simple attributes accredit to these chakras from base to crown. Base being survival and grounding. Your sacral being sexual energy and emotion. Your solar plexus, your willpower and self-concentration. Your self-confidence. There was a concentration just one line below and it messed with my brain. Your self-confidence and laughter. Your heart being from where you love, where your heart intelligence resides, where you find your compassion. Your voice being your creativity and your communication. Your intuition coming from your third eye as imagination and concentration. And then finally, your crown, the part of you that's open to infinity, where you find union, bliss, and empathy. When they are spinning in balance, they vitalize the body and support physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Pulling this card reinforces your intention to balance and strengthen your energy centers so that you may better engage your purpose and act in the world as a whole, healthy being of light. Envision your chakras as a rainbow column of spinning lights. Imagine each color as spinning bright and clear. Feel each rainbow vortex aiding you in your path towards wholeness. Our path towards wholeness. The red looks like an egg. The hands are closest to the egg. There is some holding happening there as well. I'll count it. Love is true. Thank you, friends, for joining me, for finding a moment to spend some time here alongside it. Maybe I want to read a small little snippet of Carl Jung's work. Maybe. That wouldn't be not nice. It might not be exactly your vibe. You might not particularly enjoy Carl Jung. But analytical psychology is something that you're gonna be doing whether you like it or not, kind of vibes. The universe will analytically psychologize you. That's totally how you say it. That's totally how it works. I don't have my book in here. I'm gonna have to go somewhere else. At least I do remember where I put it. This is fine. It doesn't open to the last page I was on. Good thing I completed that article. Let's see if we can find something we want to read. What is today's topic been? I really wish I had a language model already on top of this thing so I can ask it. It might be too long. But there's one that goes, the significance of the father in the destiny of the individual. That seems a little bit much, huh? The change in character, phenomena, relation to hysterical attack, relation to the unconscious personality. The other viewpoint, the will to power. The will to power is like 9 pages. I feel it could be attached to strength, right? The will to power and strength. The consequences of the assimilation of the unconscious. That sounds sick. Remarkable theory, analytical, causal, reductive interpretation. Yeah, I think I want to read that. I think I'm going to read 398. You ready for this? What? Young read? What a treat! I like the readings. Yay. Me too. Me too. I feel like it's like my brain grows when I do these readings as well because his language is so beautiful. And I don't talk like this, but I would like to be able to at the very least. I oxygenate my brain. I am capable of reading English. I know how to. I just have to take it one word at a time. The other viewpoint, the will to power. We have so far considered the problem of the psychology of the unconscious processes, mainly from the point of view of Freud. We have thereby doubtless gained an inkling of a real truth, which perhaps our pride, our consciousness of civilization tries to deny, although something else in us affirms it. This situation is extremely irritating to some people, arousing resistances, and at the same time, they are terror-stricken by it, a fact that they are most unwilling to acknowledge. There is something terrible in admitting this conflict, for it is an acknowledgement of being swayed by instinct. Has it ever been understood what it means to confess to the sway of instinct? Nietzsche desired to be so swayed and advocated it most seriously. He even sacrificed himself throughout his whole life with rare passion to the idea of the Superman. What is to the idea of the man who, obeying his instincts, transcends even this very self? And what was the course of his life? Yeah, Nietzsche didn't end up like dying very nicely, right? Like the dude was not taking care of himself, kind of vibes. Like listening to that animal in you, I get where he was coming from, but it's also like, a puppy will eat itself until the point of, like bursting stomachs or whatever, right? Like, you shouldn't, please sit down, bro. He even sacrificed himself, obeying his instincts. And what was the course of his life? It turned out Nietzsche himself prophesied in the passage in Zarathustra, relating to the fatal fall of the rope dancer, of the man who did not want to be surpassed. Zarathustra says to the dying rope dancer, "Thy soul will be dead even sooner than thy body." And later, the dwarf says to Zarathustra, "O Zarathustra, thou stone of wisdom, thou threwest thyself high, but every thrown stone must fall. Condemned of thyself, and to thine own stoning, O Zarathustra, far indeed threwest thou the stone, but upon thyself will it recoil." And scene. When he cried this echo homo over himself, it was again too late, and the crucifixion of the soul began even before the body was dead. He who thus taught, ye saying to the instincts of life, must have his own career looked at critically, in order to discover the effects of this teaching upon the teacher. But if we consider his life from the point of view, we must say that Nietzsche lived beyond instinct, in the lofty atmosphere of heroic sublimity. Sublimity. That is the way it's spelled, but it sounds wrong. Sublimity? No, that's right. This height could only be maintained by means of the most careful diet, choice climate, and above all, by many opioids. Finally, the tension of his living shattered his brain. He spoke of ye saying and lived the nay. Yea saying and lived the nay. Yes, see, fucking Carl Jung is like putting Friedrich Nietzsche in a barrel and shooting it. I'm gonna read this again because it's cracking me up. I'm gonna do it again. The whole thing. It's hilarious. Because like Carl Jung was also very critical of his peers, right? Him and Freud were like homies. They were like big homies. And then Carl Jung was like, "No, bro, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I think you were wrong," Carl Jung says. Which I get, I relate to that, but still, love is true. But if we consider his life from the point of view, we must say that Nietzsche lived beyond instinct, in the lofty atmosphere of the heroic sublimity. This height could only be maintained by means of the most careful diet, choice climate, and above all, by many opioids. Finally, the tension of his living shattered his brain. He spoke of yea saying, but lived the nay. His horror of people, especially of the animal man who lives by instinct, was too great. He could not swallow the toad of which he so often dreamed, and which he feared he must yet gulp down. The Zarathustrian lion roared all the higher men who craved for life back into the carnivorous depth of the unconscious. Like I closed my eyes for a second and I was getting blasted somewhere. Where am I going? I'm going towards trees. That's nice. I'm fine with this. The Zarathustrian lion roared all the higher, and it isn't put in parentheses, all the higher men who craved for life back into the cavernous depths of the unconscious, which is why his life does not convince us of the truth of his teaching. The higher man should be able to sleep without chloral and be competent to live in Nuremberg or Basel despite the thoughts and shadows. Carl Jung, you're referencing stuff that I haven't read, bro. Don't be like that. He wants women and offspring. He needs to feel he has some value and position in the herd. He longs for innumerable commonplaces, and not least for what is humdrum. It is this instinct that Nietzsche did not recognize. It is, in other words, the natural animal instinct for life. Woo! Yow! Now we're getting there. But how did he live if it was not for natural impulse? Should Nietzsche really be accused of practical denial of his natural instincts? He would hardly agree to that. Indeed, he might even prove that without difficulty that he really was following his instincts in the highest sense. But we may well ask how it is possible that human instincts could have led him so far from humanity into absolute isolation, into an aloofness from the herd which he supported with loathing and disgust. One would have thought that instinct would have united, would have coupled and begot, that it would tend towards pleasure and good cheer, towards gratification of all sensual desires. But we have quite overlooked the fact that this is only one of the possible directions of instinct. There exists not only the instinct for the preservation of the species, the sexual instinct, but also the instinct for the preservation of the self. Yes, this is making me so happy. I feel like I'm like, yes, teach me more, Carl Jung. Nietzsche obviously speaks of this latter instinct, that is of the will to power. Whatever other kinds of instinct may exist are for him only a consequence of the will to power. Viewed from the standpoint of Freud's sexual psychology, this is a gross error, a misconception of biology, a bad choice made by a descendant neurotic human being. For it would be easy for any adherent of sexual psychology to prove that all that was too lofty, too heroic in Nietzsche's conception of the world and of life was nothing but a consequence of the repression and misconception of instinct. That is, of the instinct that this psychology considers fundamental. This brings us to the question of perception. Or rather, it were better to say of the various lenses through which the world may be perceived. For it would hardly be permissible to pronounce a judgment on life like Nietzsche's. It was lived with rare consistency from the beginning to the faithful end, in accordance with his underlying natural fundamental instinct for power. It would hardly do to pronounce it be merely figurative, Otherwise, we should make the same unjust condemnation that Nietzsche pronounced upon his polar opposite, Richard Wagner, of whom he said, "Everything in him is false." What is genuine is hidden or disguised. He is an actor in every bad and good meaning of the word. Why this judgment? Wagner is a precise representative of that other fundamental instinct, which Nietzsche overlooked, and upon which Freud's psychology is based. If we inquire whether the other main instinct, that of power, was unconsidered by Freud, we should find that he has included it under the same name of the ego instinct. But these ego instincts drags out an obscure existence. According to the psychology, alongside the broad, all too broad, development of the sexual theme. In reality, however, human nature wages a cruel and hardly to be ended warfare between the ego principle and that of formless instinct. The ego is all barriers. Instinct on the other side is without any limits. Both principles are equally powerful, and in a certain sense, men may account themselves fortunate in being conscious of only one instinct. Therefore, he who is wise avoids getting to know the other. But if, after all, he does get to know the other instinct, he is indeed a lost man. For then he enters upon the Phausian conflict. Goethe has shown us in the first part of Faust what the acceptance of instinct involves, and in the second part what the acceptance of the ego and of his gruesome unconscious world would signify. Everything that is insignificant, petty, cowardly in us shrinks from it and would avoid it, and here is one admirable means of doing so, namely by discovering that other things in us is another fellow. A live man who actually thinks, feels, does, and desires all the things that are despicable and odious. In this way, the bogey is seized, and the battle against him is begun to our satisfaction. Hence arise also those chronic idiosyncrasies of which the history of morals has preserved a few examples for us. The instance of Nietzsche contra Wagner, already cited, is particularly transparent. But ordinary human life is crammed full of such cases. It is by these ingenious devices that man saves himself from the Faustian catastrophe for which he inevitably lacks both courage and strength. But a sincere man knows that even his bitterest opponent, or any number of them, does not by any means equal his own worst adversary. That is, his own self, who abides within his breast. Nietzsche unconsciously had Wagner in himself. That is why he envied him his Parsifal. But even worse, he was a Saul, like Saul, and also had Paul within him. That is why Nietzsche became a stigmatized outcast of the spirit. He had, like Saul, to experience crucifixion when the other self inspired him with the Ecce Homo, which man in him broke down before the cross. Wagner or Nietzsche. The Wagner in him, right? Because even though he doesn't believe it, it's the instinct that kept him going. And the part of him that wanted to love himself was the part that got crucified. Right? It was ordained by destiny that one of Freud's earliest pupils, Adler, should formulate the view of neurosis as founded exclusively upon the principle of power. It is interesting and even fascinating to observe how totally different the same things appear when viewed in another light. In order to emphasize the main contrast, I would like at once to draw attention to the fact that according to Freud, everything is strictly causal consequences of previously occurring facts. Adler, on the contrary, sees everything as a finally conditioned arrangement. To take a simple example, a young woman begins to have an attack of terror. She wakes at night from some nightmare with a piercing cry. Calming herself with difficulty, she clings to her husband, imploring him not to leave her, making him repeat again and again that he loves her, etc. Gradually, a nervous asthma develops, attacks of which also come on during the day. In such a case, the Freudian system begins at once to borrow in the inner causality of the illness. What did the initial anxiety dreams contain? She recalls wild bulls, lions, tigers, and bad men. What does the patient associate with them? She told the story of something that had happened to her when she was still single. It ran as follows. She was staying in a summer resort in the mountains. A great deal of tennis was being played, the casual acquaintances being made. There was a young Italian who played particularly well and who also knew how to handle the guitar in the evenings. A harmless flirtation developed, leading once to a moonlight walk. And on this occasion, the Italian temperament unexpectedly broke through, running away with the young man to the great terror of the unsuspecting girl. He looked at her with such a look that she could never forget. This look follows her even in her dreams. The wild animals that persecuted her had it. As a matter of fact, does this look originally come from the Italian? Another reminiscence enlightens us. The patient had lost her father through an accident when she was about 14 years old. The father was a man of the world and traveled a great deal. Not long before his death, he took her to Paris, where among other things they visited the Folies, Burgers, Barège. Excuse me, I am uncultured. Something happened there that at the time made a deep impression upon her. As they were leaving the theater, a rugged female suddenly pressed close up to her father in an impertinent way. She looked at her father in fear as to what he would do. And then she saw that look, the animal glare in his eyes. An inexplicable something clung to her that day. An inexplicable something clung to her day and night. From this moment, her attitude to her father has quite changed. At one instant, she was irritable and full of venomous moods. At another, she loved him extravagantly. And then causeless fits of crying suddenly began, and for a time, whenever her father was at home, she was tormented by a terrible choking at table, with apparent attacks of suffocation, which were usually followed by voicelessness lasting from 1 to 2 days. When the news of her father's sudden death arrived, she was overcome by uncontrollable grief, ending in hysterical laughter. But she soon calmed down. Her condition improved quickly, and the neurotic symptoms disappeared almost completely. It seemed as if a veil of forgetfulness had descended over the past. Only the experience of the Italian rose something in her of which she was afraid. She had broken off completely with the young man. A few years later, she married. The present neurosis only began after the birth of her second child. This is at the moment when she discovered that her husband took a certain tender interest in another woman. This history raises a number of questions. For instance, what do we know about the mother? It should be said of her that she was very nervous and that she had tried many kinds of sanatoria? Sanations between her and her husband had been very strained as far back as the patient could remember. The mother did not understand the father. The daughter always felt that she understood him better. She was, moreover, her father's declared favorite, being inwardly correspondingly cool towards her mother. These facts are indications for a survey of the meaning of the illness. Behind the present symptoms, fantasies are operative, connected in the first place with the young Italian, but further clearly referring to the father, whose unhappy marriage furnished the little daughter with an early opportunity of acquiring a position that really should have been filled by her mother. Behind this conquest there lies, of course, a fantasy of being the woman who was really suited to her father. The first attack of neurosis broke out at the moment when this fantasy received a violent shock, presumably similar to that the mother had once experienced, a fact that was, however, unknown to the child. The symptoms are easily comprehensible as the expressions of disappointment and rejected love. The choking is based upon a sensation of tightening in the throat that is a well-known accompanying phenomenon of violent effects which we cannot quite swallow. The metaphors of language often refer to similar psychological occurrences. When the father died, it seems that her consciousness sorrowed deeply, but her unconsciousness laughed, after the manner of Till Eulenspiegel, who was sad when he went downhill but was jolly when climbing laboriously, happy in anticipation of what was coming. When the father was at home, the girl was low-spirited and ill, but whenever he was away, she felt much better. Herein she resembles numerous husbands and wives who as yet are mutually hiding from each other the great secret that they are not under all circumstances indispensable to one another. That the unconscious had some right to laugh was shown by the subsequent period of good health. She succeeded in letting all that she had past retire behind the trapdoor. The experience of the Italian, however, threatened to bring the netherworld up again, but she quickly pulled the handle and shut the door. She remained quite well until the dragon of neurosis came creeping in. Just when she imagined herself to be already safely out of her troubles, in the so to say perfect state of wife and mother, sexual psychology finds the cause of the neurosis in the fact that patient is not at the bottom free from the father. This forces her to resuscitate her former experience at the moment when she discovered in the Italian the very same disturbing something that had formerly made such a deep impression upon her when received in her father. These recollections were naturally revived by the analogous, I know how to say that word, analogous? Analogous experience with another man, and formed the starting point of the neurosis. It might therefore be said that the content and cause of the neurosis lay in the conflict between the fantastic, infantile, erotic relation to the father on the one hand, and her love for the husband on the other. Yeah, Freud, he is taking the Freudian perspective, and it's always weird to me, bro. Why do you have to make it so weird, Freud? Please, bro. But if we now consider the course of the same illness from the standpoint of the other instinct, that of the will to power, a different complexion is put upon the matter. Her parents' unhappy marriage afforded an excellent opportunity for the exhibition of childish instinct for power. The instinct for power desires that, under all circumstances, the ego should be on top, whether by straight or crooked means. At all costs, the integrity of the personality must be preserved. Every attempt, even what appears to be an attempt of the surroundings to bring about the slightest subjugation of the individual is resorted to by the masculine protest, as Adler expresses it. The mother's disappointment and her taking refuge in a neurosis brought about an opportunity for the development of power and the attainment of a dominating position. Love and excellence of conduct are, as everybody knows, extremely well adapted weapons for the purpose of the instinct for power. Woo! Virtue is not seldom made the means of forcing recognition from others. Already, as a child, she knew how to obtain a privileged position with her father by means of specifically pleasing and amiable. Let's start again. By means of specifically pleasing and amiable behavior, even occasionally to supplement her mother. This was not out of love for her father, although love was a good means of obtaining the covertory superiority. The hysterical laughter at the death of her father is a striking proof of this fact. One is inclined to consider such an explanation as a deplorable depreciation of love, if not actually a malicious insinuation. But let us pause a moment, reflect, and look at the world as it really is. Have we ever seen those innumerable people who love and believe in their love only until its purpose is achieved, and who then turn away as if they had never loved? And after all, does not nature herself do the same? In fact, it is a purposeless love. In fact, is a purposeless love even possible? If so, it belongs to the highest human virtues, which confessedly are extremely rare. Perhaps there is a general disposition to reflect as little as possible about the nature and purpose of love. Discoveries might be made which show the value of one's love to be less considerable than we had supposed. However, it were dangerous to life to subtract anything from the value of fundamental instincts. Perhaps specifically so today, when we seem to have only a minimum of values left. So the patient had an attack of hysterical laughter at the death of her father. She had finally arrived at the top. It was hysterical laughter, therefore, a psychogenic symptom, that is, something proceeding from an unconscious motive and not from those of the conscious ego. That is a difference that should not be underrated, for it enables us to recognize whence and how human virtues arise. Their contraries led to hell. That is, in modern terms, to the unconscious, where the counterparts of our conscious virtue have long been gathering. That is why our very virtue makes us desire to know nothing of the unconscious. Indeed, it is even the summit of virtuous wisdom to maintain that there is no unconscious at all. But unfortunately, we are all in a like predicament with Brother Meredith in the ETA Hoffman's The Elixir of the Devil. Somewhere or other, there exists a sinister, terrible brother, or own incarnate counterpart bound to us by flesh and blood, who comprehends everything, maliciously hoarding whatever we most desire should disappear beneath the table. The first outbreak of neurosis occurred in our patient at the moment when she became aware of the fact that there was something in her father which she did not control. Woo! That line, let me take a second. The first outbreak of neurosis occurred in our patient at the moment she became aware of the fact that there was something in her father which she did not control. And then it dawned upon her of what use her mother's neurosis was. when one meets with an obstacle that cannot be overcome by sensible and charming means, there yet exists an arrangement hitherto unknown to her, which her mother had been beforehand in discovering, and that is neurosis. That is the reason why she now imitates her mother. But the astonished reader asks, what is supposed to be the use of neurosis? What does it affect? Whoever has had a pronounced case of neurosis in his immediate environment knows all that can be affected by a neurosis. In fact, there is altogether no better means of tyrannizing over a whole household than by a striking neurosis. Heart attacks, choking fits, convulsions of all kinds achieve enormous effects that can hardly be surpassed. Picture the fountains of pity let loose, the sublime anxiety of the dear kind parents, the hurried running to and fro of the servants, the incessant sounding of the call to the telephone, the hasty arrival of the physicians, the delicacies of the diagnosis, the detailed examinations, the lengthy courses of treatment, the considerable expense, and there, in the midst of all of the uproar, lies the innocent sufferer, to whom the household is even overflowingly grateful when he has recovered from the spasms. And he's putting spasms. The girl, discovering this inappropriate arrangement, applying it to an occasion when the father was there with success, it becomes unnecessary when the father died, for now she was finally uppermost. The Italian was soon dismissed because he laid too much stress upon her femininity by an inopportune reminder of his manliness. When the way opened to the possibility of a suitable marriage, she loved, adapting herself without any complaint to the deplorable role of the queen bee, as long as she held the position of admired superiority. Everything went splendidly. But when her husband evinced a small outside interest, she was obliged again to have recourse to the extremely efficacious arrangements, that is, to the indirect application of power, because she had once again come upon that thing, this time in her husband, that had previously withdrawn her father from her influence. That is how the matter appears from the standpoint of the psychology of power. I fear the reader will feel as did the Cadi, before whom the council of one spoke first. When he had ended, the Cadi said, "Thou hast spoken well. I perceive that thou art right." I love Carl Jung so much. Then spoke the council for another party, and then he had ended, the Cadi scratched himself behind the ear and said, "Thou hast spoken well. I perceive that thou also art right." There is no doubt that the instinct for power plays a most extraordinary part. It is true that the complexes of the neurotic symptoms are also exquisite arrangement that inexorably realize their aims with incredible obstinacy and unequaled cunning. The neurosis is final. That is, it is directed towards an aim. Adler merits considerable distinction for having demonstrated this. Which of the 2 points of view is right? That is a question that might well cause much brain racking. For the 2 explanations cannot be simply combined, being absolutely contradictory. In one case, it is love, and its course that is the principal and decisive fact. In the other case, it is the power of the ego. In the first case, the ego is merely a kind of appendage to the passion for love, and in the second, love is upon occasion merely a means to the end, that of gaining the upper hand. In both those cases, love is true. Just to make myself right, look at me. psychologicalizing superiorize already. How about sits down Freud and Jung, how about love is true? How about we don't go that deep? How about we don't try and we just think love is true, right? That woman will literally go into neurosis because of the amount of love she has for, again, her arrangements. And arrangements, it's such a beautiful word, and he puts arrangements in quotation marks as well because that's the right word. That's definitely the right word. Love is true. In this case, in the first case, the ego is merely a kind of appendage. I've already read that part. Gaining the upper hand. However, whoever has the power of the ego most at heart rebels against the former conception. Who also cares most about love will never be able to reconcile the latter. Yeah, well, Carl Jung, get called out, bro. I have reconciled. I do kind of lean more into the love side of things. And at the same time, Meltmore is literally an ego. It's an ego I've created for myself to remind myself to not have an ego, right? Oh, you think you have ego? You take a bunch of psychedelics, your ego melts, literally. You feel like you're melting, and the only thing you can do is melt more. And that's where the name came from, right? And then, like as a sub layer, I had to try and make sense of this human experience, right? And instead of going that deep with it, messing with myself, because I feel like all of this messes with us a little bit, right? And I love how he goes, like this part is my favorite part. That is how the matter appears from the standpoint of the psychology of power. I fear that the reader, as did the Qadi, before whom the council of one party spoke first, will feel as the reader did. He had ended. I'm already cracking up again. He had ended the. When he had ended, the Qadi said, "Thou hast spoken well. I perceive that thou art right." Yeah. What's right is love. Right? In both of those cases, in both of those interpretations, love is true. And maybe that is this simple approach. Maybe Carl Jung and Freud are doing like 360s in their caskets right now. Maybe they don't like that. But honestly, bro, that really is the only thing that matters. If there was no love, and he did say that, the whole means to an end thing, right? Love is upon occasion merely a means to an end, and on the other one, the ego is an appendage to the passion of love. Like this ego is like an extension from love, and that is technically more of what I believe. Technically speaking, but at the same time, without ego, I would not have shown up a day for that love, right? Without any ego, without like living purely in that state of instinct, for example, I would have just chilled, right? I would have, I don't know, been like a freeloader on my dad's account for the rest of my life. But it's ego that got in the way, right? Ego was like, nah, dude. How about no? How about you can't just chill? You know. And how about no? Ego says. And I am clearly being driven by it. I am being driven by it. But I feel like it's a which came first kind of thing at this point. Right? The egg or the chicken? I know the answer. The chicken came first. You know how I know that? Or at least how I solve that riddle, is by knowing that there are other creatures that can do something called live births. So they form eggs inside of their bodies, and then those eggs rupture inside their bodies, and then those babies come out of them. I'm so sorry that you have to visualize that with me. But in that way, a baby was born that had the capacity to lay an egg in the outer world, but had to have had the capacity to lay an egg on the inner world first. So the version of that chicken that got born that could bring the egg into this world came first. And therefore, the chicken. My point I was trying to make is that yes, ego, but no ego if not love. Yes, love, but nothing to love if no lens of the ego, right? And he did say that as soon as you reconcile, you are truly lost, and maybe I am. I'll consider that too. I won't take too much offense. What I do know is love is true. And I feel like reading that just reaffirmed at least the way that I have chosen to understand it in myself. Mm, all right, love is true. Every stone, every thrown stone must fall. Excellent, very beautiful. I like the readings. Love is true. Our ego is the stone that was thrown high into the air in an attempt to have it noticed. Ego needs to be melted. You need to melt that little stone into goo, and then you need to put that goo into a shape. And that shape is you, day by day, right? You don't need to throw the stone into the air. Melt soul of the chicken, egg paradox. Lol, I like it. Thank you. Love is true. I'll see you friends again soon. I'm going to read a goodbye message, and then we can say our goodbyes. Can you please write me a Shan message about becoming stronger and how everything else in life becomes easier? Excellent reading, brother. Thank you. I do still feel like I'm a little bit rusty, but I'm getting better. I'll continue to read with you, friends. This stream is about consciously evolving, so I feel like these readings have had that nature. I like having you friends here with me, and I'll say, I hope you have the most magnificent day. I wholeheartedly love you all so profoundly and tenderly, luminously and joyously, marvelously, staggeringly, dazzlingly, overwhelmingly, melt, and all of you. Oh, so inspiring, compassionate and uplifting, thoughtful and understanding, kind, amazing, radiant and extraordinary friends who embrace the journey of becoming stronger. As you grow, everything else in life will become easier. Maybe you'll become so strong, you'll have all of this extra room to carry things, and you'll be able to help those that are struggling around you as well. Right? That's what I look forward to. All of us having the room, having the strength. Let's just call it strength, right? Having the strength to help other people. Love is true. I'll see you friends again soon. Thank you for joining me. Until we do it again tomorrow. Goodbye!